I'm teaching year 6 also, J2 lah. Yeah, and then it's my first time teaching H3 Chem, so I'm here just to have a sense of what is this stimulus-based question about. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I go next. Hi, I'm Justin. I'm from EJ. I'm also teaching J2 Chem and actually PhD as well. Basically here to just learn how to make stimulus-based questions because usually we are you to set the questions. Such questions at least.
Hi, I'm Jackson from I. I'm teaching year 6 GC2 this year as well. First time taking H3.
Hi, Im Chang. I think we can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm Min Chang from RI also. Yeah, just come to learn about some of the pedagogy or content about H3 Chem.
Hi, Steph, shall we start? I mean,
Yeah, sure. We are waiting for a couple of teachers, I think 3 more, but it's okay also.
Yeah.
I'm just getting them to introduce themselves, but if you're ready, perhaps, I see that we have another teacher who just joined us by video. Maybe could have him to just introduce himself, then we can start.
Wei Jian from Nanyang Girls High School. I'm just here to see what Hwa Chong site is actually doing because our students is going to go over there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for attending, and thank you Chong Shin also for sharing today. So I'll hand over the time to you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I will just share my screen, please. If you can get the link in the chat, that's the link to the folder, which I have put up some materials. I think maybe I just run you all through very quickly. Okay, yeah. So the folder. Oops. Wait. This is not the Google site. Sorry. Okay, let me see what I can do. Okay, sorry. I'm intending to share the Google site, but in the end, instead I shared something else. Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So this is the Google site. If you click on the link, I think you will reach here. So so there are some resources in the past and currently which we put in for the participants. So these are the resources for last year's workshop. Quite similar. That one was done by Sean Ling and I, where she shared the second half of it. Yeah. So these are some of the things we talk about. And then we also gave the resources where Cambridge referred to set their stimulus-based question. So they are in the folder. And there is also an article which I shared with the participants, in fact, in 2019. Yeah. So in 2019, we have a workshop live in Hwa Chong. So we had some we had some activities because I think it's easier to do it live if you have people here. So yeah, so I actually shared with them on some of the recent advances in chemistry. Yeah. So the reason why I shared this particular article was they actually kind of like interviewed the young scientists, and then each of the scientists get to talk about what is the most current thing or the contemporary things that they are working on. And the reason why I shared this was also to link the teachers back to what research is currently, so that when they think of questions to maybe set for stimulus-based, that could be something that they look at. And in fact, if I can later on refer you to some of the resources, right? They actually use it maybe for the national fixation part. Yeah, so later on I will just share with you. Yeah, so whenever you are free, I think it's good for you to look through this particular maybe interview with the scientist so that you can at least take a look at what is being done currently. Yeah. Okay, so these are just a very short introduction on the resources. Yeah, so I will just go back. Yeah, and then some other things that you might find useful. So for today's one is over here. I have not put in the slides, but I will do it later. Yeah, and okay, maybe I'll exit this first. Yeah, and I will share the screen. Sorry, just give me a while. Yeah. Of my slides. Yep. Okay, maybe for everyone's information, we will be recording the session today. It's largely for professional development purposes, so that eventually, if CPDB or if we find that the workshop content is useful, we can put it in OPEL 2.0. Yeah, just for everyone's information. Okay. Anything that I mean, don't worry about you showing your face, because if that's the case, those information will be blurred out. So I don't think you can need to worry about that. The bulk of the content is what I'm going to share, so I think that will be the more important part. Okay, so I'm just going to go to the slide modes. Yeah. Okay, let me know if you can't see my slides. Yeah, if not, then I'll just start off. Yeah, so yeah, welcome to the workshop. So I'm going to share with you some of the thoughts I have over the past few years. In fact, actually, the past 8 years to 9 years, doing questions based on research papers. So I termed this, we kind of like changed the name of this workshop from conceptualization to the final product. Because we want to share, I think, with the participants, the main thing, what exactly transpired behind the scene. Yeah, so I think, I mean, from last year, I realized that actually if I'm the one doing the talking alone, it might not be very useful because I think my experience is just a very one-dimensional aspect. So last year, I got my second in charge for the NLC in. So Sean Ling came in to share in the second half. She was talking about how our collaboration went in 2019 and how she actually came up with the stimulus-based question for our prelim papers based on a few iterations between she and I, and as well as the team of teachers discussing the papers. So I think this is a process that is perhaps more important than anything else. Yeah, because at the end of the day, you can have as much resources as you want, but if you can't make use of them, I think it's not going to be very useful, and you can't get a very useful product out of it. Yeah. So today, unfortunately, Sean Ling cannot join us because she has some CCA running. So I've managed to get Grace and Kien Soon. Grace from SAJC, Kien Soon from NY. They will be coming in at about 4:30. Thereabouts. So that's kind of like during the break time where we can do further Q&A or self-introduction. Yeah. So they will come in and then they will take over from there, and then we'll have some maybe sharing across everyone if you have something interesting to share. Okay. Yeah. So this is the link to the Google site. So if you have not clicked it, it's actually on the chat. Yeah. So I'll just run you through the program. So at least for the first 1 hour, I'll be the one doing the talking. So it's I'm sorry, but it's a bit one-dimensional for that 1 hour. Yeah, but I just want to share with everyone some of my thoughts. In case, I mean, for those of you who are listening to me for the second time or even a third time, right? So my apologies. I think it might be a bit different. I'm not sure. Yeah, because I think I don't really have a speech, so I just say whatever it comes to my mind. And then after that, we have about 15 minutes. I know it's a bit long, but it's really for them to come in case they miss the time, and as well as if you have any questions, you can ask me, as well as buffer time. You know, like if I overrun, then because I'm keeping a very close watch at the time now. So in case I overrun, then at least we won't drag. Yeah. So last year we managed to finish I think 20 minutes earlier. So I think we can look forward to that. Of course, if you have questions that you want to ask or things you want to share, then yeah, we can continue to discuss until 5:30. It's not really a big issue. Yeah. So after the break, then we'll have Kien Soon and Grace coming in to share with us some of the thoughts they have. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I will continue from here. So just to share that all the opinions here are solely my own, and of course from Kien Soon and Grace, it will be their own opinions. Okay, the reason why maybe I will give a reason for this slide, because when I was sharing this in 2019, right, I was thinking that because I was trying to share with the participants what might transpire in the mind of the Cambridge examiners when they came up with the specimen paper. But these are all my thoughts. So I thought that I just want to make sure that everyone knows that it's purely based on my speculations, and of course as a practitioner what I'm thinking. So it's definitely not so Cambridge examiner has never kind of shared with us how they actually came up with the questions. Yeah, so it's just my own views. Yeah, so in case you are taking it back to share with your colleagues, do let them know that these are just my opinions. Yeah. Okay, I will just maybe show you the milestone of our NLC, how it has moved on for the past few cycles. So it started in 2017, and then we were doing some prep work, and then 2018 actually Shuang Ling from Diamond was test grading stimulus-based question with Hua Chong. So together we have a combined prelim, but back then it's the old syllabus, so there's no stimulus-based questions. Yeah. So what we did was we co-set some questions together, and then we bring it back to our schools and then let the students try. Although it's still the old syllabus, but no harm working on something. Yeah. 2019 we had collaboration with other JCs. A stimulus-based question was set with Shuang Ling. And then we have a collaboration between 4 JC for combined prelim. Last year, although it's a COVID year, but we had 3 clusters of collaboration schools, which are indicated below. So we have 3 different sets of stimulus-based questions. And then we are fortunate that later on, Kien Soon from NY will share with us some of the thoughts that went on behind setting that particular questions. Yeah, it's also my first time listening to it. And then for Grace's case, she will share with us how she conceptualized her electrochem questions, and then after that we discuss with me, and then some iteration we did, and then the final product is what you have seen in the prelim papers. Yeah. Okay, I just want to share with you a personal anecdotes. I'm not sure whether it's going to be useful, but that's something that you can maybe take back and think about. So one of my philosophy is when I design questions, right, I prefer to, or even simple tasks for students, I prefer to be forward-looking. Forward-looking in the sense that I would like to ensure that the questions can challenge the best mind and yet motivates or rather inspire the students who are unmotivated. This is a very Herculean task. So I think over the years or over the months, every year, every moment I've been learning how to do things maybe in a different way or what. Yeah. So that's something that I thought is quite interesting. Yeah. So I actually skipped this in the past, last year's workshop. Just because I was thinking that online it's difficult to inspire the audience with this story, but I thought that okay, I'll try it this time. So I don't know if it's going to be successful, but it's actually not a very interesting story. But I shared with my colleagues. They felt that okay, it seems that it's interesting. By looking at things from a different perspective, we can actually come up with a slightly different product. Yeah, so I just share with you some anecdote I had in, when I was doing my studies in Hong Kong. Okay, so I did my graduate studies in Hong Kong, by the way. Yeah, so I'll just keep this really short. So basically, this is a picture in one of the war village in Hong Kong. It's called Fanling. You might have seen Google here. Yes, I snapshot it from Google because when I was traveling around Hong Kong that time, right, I did not manage to capture a shot from this particular angle. Yeah, so if you look at it this way, right, this particular little pond, it doesn't look very nice. Okay, it's like somewhere in the middle with all the fences around, so it's actually quite ugly. Okay, then the next picture I'm going to show you will be 3 of my friends on exchange back then, 2009. Actually, it's 2008. Okay, so they were doing a jump shot. So you can see that the jump shot is done over here. Okay, so they were doing a jump shot. You can see that the fences are real, and then there are fences here. Okay, then the next picture is one that I took, which is like this. Yeah, so I think yeah, so this is the picture taken by me. So I just want to share that sometimes when we look at things in a different perspective, right, we can come up with new grounds, and then maybe new ways of asking questions, and maybe new ways of testing the students, the same concept but in a different way. Yeah, in fact, back then I especially go to this particular war village, right? It's really to look at this picture because I saw this picture in one of the picture exhibition, and then I was so intrigued by it. I wanted to see it myself, but I can tell you the horror I experienced when I went there, because this is what I saw. So I was a bit disappointed, but when I walked around the perimeter, right, I saw this. Of course, I need to step forward a little bit. So then I realized that, okay, so in the eyes of a photographer, right, the world is always a very beautiful place because they are able to capture that very exact and precise angle that will bring even the ugliest place, it may seem that it's very beautiful. Yeah, so in fact, when I was teaching stereochemistry to my students, this is actually a direct reflection. It's a mirror image because the water is very, very still. And a lot of my students thought this is a river. They didn't know that it's just a little pond. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So my experience of coming up crafting question actually dated all the way back in the early 2000s when I was training the Singapore team for Chemistry Olympiad. So yeah, I mean I just show you that this is one sample and this is another sample on bio-inorganic chem. And sometimes things we did in the past, you never know that they actually going to come in very useful for you when you are actually crafting questions, maybe even at this stage. So actually over the years, I do visit some of the old questions that I crafted, and then I recraft them into the context that's suitable for students now. So I think a little advice I have is that whatever we have done in the past, right, they shouldn't be gone to a waste. Actually, they could be very useful as well, because we'll never know how the syllabus will change, and how things will be different maybe 10 years from now, 5 years from now. Yeah, this is another scenario that I crafted back then. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to bore you the details. Okay, but I'm just going to share with you another story, which I experienced last year. So last year was the COVID year, but before COVID took place, before it got really serious or spiral out of control, right? I actually went to Australia for a sabbatical, so I went to La Trobe University. Yeah, so this is the photo which I took with the students some time ago. Over at La Trobe. Yeah, so okay, so you may be wondering who are they? They are actually the 4 honors students whom I taught in one of the course. It's called photochemistry. So yeah, photochemistry is a subject which is very close to my heart, and I kind of like really feel that I want to do something a bit different from JC. So having some conversation with my deputy principals in the early 2019 actually allows this sabbatical to come to fruition. Yeah, so back then, yeah, I managed to go there, and actually I co-teach another course with my good friend there. Actually, I have a friend, she's a professor in La Trobe. So we did medicinal chemistry together, and then I designed a course on photochem. Yeah, but of course today, I'm not going to tell you about photochem because yeah, I mean that's not the purpose. But I just want to share that something I did in La Trobe actually came in very useful last year during the COVID year for our internal H3 assessment. Yeah, so actually what happened is that I'm required to actually set a short exam for photochemistry in Latrobe. So so my friend was saying, oh, you know, you teach photochem, then you cannot just leave like that, you know, like you have to come up with some exams, you know, so the students will be graded, and then they will get a letter grade, something like that, and then I'll be one doing the marking as well, yeah. But of course they can scan their scripts for me to mark, etc. Yeah. So so I have to think of exams questions. Then again, I made use of what we did in the school. I wouldn't say exactly is what we did in Hwa Chong, but it's more of like H2, H3, because H2 we have database questions, H3 we have stimulus-based questions. Yeah, and my understanding is that usually exams in universities over there, right, they don't really have this kind of scenario-based kind of questions. So I thought that I just want to give them maybe a Singapore experience in having some form of a stimulus-based question where, you know, they get to read part of the article and then answer the questions accordingly. Yeah, so that actually got me inspired to set some questions. So I was just searching online. I was searching articles for photochem. This is what I did when I was there, like thinking about what are the famous research group, and I have some favorite in mind, Imperial College, etc. So I just got some articles from this Fushta group, and yeah, I mean this South Korean group, and then okay, so eventually, I mean, I'm unless you are very interested, if not, then yeah, I won't be showing you the questions here. Yeah, actually, it's in my database. If you want later on during the break, I can just open it up for you to take a look. Yeah. So eventually, I did come up with a questions for them. It's a 25 marks question for their exams. Yeah, and then you might be wondering, then why is it useful in Hwa Chong? Why is it useful in H3? Okay, so when I came back, my colleague Gao Hong, he was asking me, hey, you know, like you have to design a stimulus-based question for their upcoming assessment, like that will be in July. I mean, it's not really a super serious kind of assessment, but it's more of like it's a formative assessment. So I said, okay, not to worry, I have something in mind already, and then we just need to modify it according to the needs for H3. And truth to be told, I just need to modify very minimally so that the civil chem question I use for the exams over there can be used back in Hwa Chong for our internal exams or internal assessment for the students. Yeah, so I think this particular story, I mean, it's probably not very inspiring to you, but I think my point is more of like sometimes little things we did during our free time or little interests we had, they can be crafted into some very rough format, and then when you need to use them, you can just lift them out, and then you don't know when it will come in useful for you. So my next slide is basically just to share with everyone that, you know, like some of the highlights you might want to have in mind is that it will be good that along the way you start to gather, you know, stuff during your free time. It could be anything you read. I mean, I like to read the newspaper. I think there are, I mean, beyond COVID, I think there are many interesting articles, even on Straits Times or even Business Times. I think recently electric vehicles is very hot. Yeah, so that's probably the reason why, I mean, okay, that's probably not the reason, but you might be able to see some correlation, you know, like from the questions which came out for H3 stimulus based last year, because it's actually on the vanadium redox battery, but of course it's not related to car battery, but you never know. I mean, when they will have questions are very similar, even for H2 wise. Okay, even if it's not for exams, it can be an activity that you get your students to do. Yeah, because I think a lot of people have the perception that H3 must be hardcore getting all the way. It's not that. That's actually not the case. You can have questions from, you know, even for H2, but just a little extension from there. Okay. I think having a sense of the theme is very important. Even if you are, let's say, in your own school, respective school, you are working as a lead or even as a coordinator for the subject area. It's important to know, to have a sense of what are the themes you need to set for this particular exams. It's a bit like, okay, I mean, my own opinion, it's a little bit like planning. When you set planning questions to prepare our students for H2 exams. Yeah, because you have your 2 years to prepare your students. The prelim is definitely too late I mean, prelim, there will be a planning questions in your practicals. Yeah, but ideally the students should have covered ideally the main areas of planning over the 2 years. So sometimes you need to strategically inject the planning question at some point in time. You know, it could be a time practice, it could be a mid-year exams, it could be a block test or something related. Yeah, so I think it's the same. I think for us, when we let the students try out stimulus-based kind of question, we do plan the themes a little bit. Although it's not written maybe directly, but we do have some themes in mind, like what the students should be exposed to at different stages. And definitely, we don't want it to be organic all the way. Yeah, and then I think the third point is something that sometimes the teachers will feel that we are already so busy. How can we find the time to read? But then I'll just leave you to think about. Sometimes I think chemistry being a subject that we took in our undergraduate years, it should be of interesting enough for you to make it a lifelong learning habit. Yeah, I mean at least for me lah. I mean even till this stage, till this day, I'm still trying to keep myself abreast of the latest research where possible. Practice is one thing, like practice setting, but not keep setting and setting and setting. But then it's about crafting maybe a theme-based task, something similar to that. Then it may help you to craft better questions next time. And then again, I think the fifth point that I thought is interesting is there should be a balance between being ideal and being realistic. You know, sometimes ideally we want to have everything, but the students only have so much time. So I think we probably need to be realistic with our expectation of the students as well. I mean that's what I thought over regarding my journey so far. At least the earlier parts in my days setting questions, and even now trying to maybe conduct even this workshop. I will be thinking about what are the things that I thought would be useful for the participants. Okay, so then back then the workshop we had this a closer look at the stimulus-based question of specimen paper. That was just 2019. So this year, I mean last year we included 2019. This year we included 2020 paper as well, just to give everyone a glimpse of what the kind of question we're expecting. But before that, we might want to pay attention to the scheme of assessment. You'll notice that the A-B ratio is actually 1:3 compared to 4:6 or 2:3 in the old syllabus. So actually the stimulus-based question, which constitute between 15 and 20 marks, is very heavy on the B skills, application skills. Just maybe something that you might want to have in mind, you know, when you're crafting the questions, because the stimulus-based question will probably take out all your B percentage. Yeah. Okay, so the specimen paper it's actually, to me, it's on green chemistry, related to green chemistry. It's actually on recycling carbon dioxide. Okay, so you can see that the paper actually provide you with a particular an abstract showing you how a catalyst is able to convert CO2 to methanol, and then they show you a cycle like this, and then followed by some questions. You realize that the specimen paper actually is set to quite a high demand. So, I mean, in my own opinion, it's really quite demanding. Let's say for our students, even I think I'm not confident to say that my current batch of H3 students, when they do this paper, right, they are able to do it well. Yeah, because I think in terms of time is quite demanding on them, and there are a lot of things to look out for. And then they are also given some delta G data, gives energy data, energetics data for your information as well. Okay. So if you take a quick look, and if you go to the Journal of American Chemical Society, you realize that they actually took it from this particular research paper. Yeah. And some of the essence of some of the key ideas were actually taken out because they do not want to bore the students with too much details. Yeah, so maybe that's something you want to have in mind, you know, when you're actually setting a stimulus-based kind of question. Just take note of the level of reading that the students need to go through. Yeah, and then of course you realize that this particular scheme is actually quite similar to the one that Cambridge has. Yeah, except probably they took out some details. Okay, another reason is also it's not colored. So I think for the Cambridge questions, having no color sometimes might make it a bit tougher. So I think for them, they try to mitigate by maybe shortening the stem, etc. So yeah, so there are a few ways that they do it. That's what I feel. And then they have an abstract too from a science paper, CO2 fixation. Yep. Okay. So it's another long process that they provided students with, and this is the one that they really simplify because in the actual paper, it's way more complicated. Way more complicated. So they actually simplify the whole cycle by just giving this little thing, which I think it makes sense because there is no reason for the for Cambridge to actually bore students with all these details. But again, that's a specimen paper, so the students have not sat for actual exam on that. Yeah, but it's just to give you a flavor. So what actually went on behind the examiner's mind? I mean, I wouldn't know, but I think my guess would be I think a good stimulus-based question, they tend to have contrasting examples. As you have seen in this earlier question, they actually use an A-mean for the conversion. And then for the later question, they actually use some enzymes, some co-catalysts, coenzymes. So that's a kind of like a contrasting example. And then one gives you methanol, the other one probably gives you a mixture of products as well. So I think it's probably they probably want it to be something that students can think about between the two scenarios and what they should do and how they should tackle it. Yeah, and then if you have the questions on your end for the specimen paper, then you will know that the question asked is actually quite demanding because they need the students to form their opinions on why certain things are being done in a certain way. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So that was what was given to us back in 2017, actually 2018, that period. Yeah. So yeah. So of course the team, the NLC, we were trying to think about okay, so how can we better set a stimulus-based question and which give us to a lot of recent examples, in fact. Yeah. Of course, the 2019 A-level paper wasn't as difficult, I have to admit. Maybe they took the suggestions probably from the teachers or from the team, I'm not sure. So it's really on nitrogen activation, so it's actually on ammonia. Yeah, so in fact, that particular year, I think I think it's just coincidental. Actually, Xiongning, for our prelim papers, right, we set a Haber-Bosch process, but we didn't set Haber-Bosch process. Sorry, we set on nitrogen activation. Yeah, so we didn't predict what Cambridge want to set. It's just that I decided, or rather we decided that nitrogen activation is probably a theme on green chemistry we want to focus on. Yeah. So yeah, so this was the A-level paper, and then yeah, if you do a Google search, you realize that they actually took the information, I think an online information, and then another one for a research papers, related research papers. So this was one of the papers they took it from. Okay, yeah, and yeah, these are some of the data they took the paper, they took from the article and the papers, but of course they try to condense it into something easier to read. Okay, yeah, so this is the exact one, ammonia synthesis from nitrogen H2O using lithium cycling electrification strategy, but of course they didn't go a lot into the details. Yeah. Last year's paper was quite a surprise, although it's a COVID year, but they are quite demanding as well. So it was on electrochem. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with the questions, but yeah. So actually, I mean I scanned this. So they actually took it from a research paper on electrochem. Yeah. Actually, this diagram is drawn by Cambridge in a simplified manner. The actual diagram is a lot more complicated. If I may show you, it actually looks like this. Yeah. So this was actually from the actual research paper, and you see that it's very old paper, so the details are kind of like missing in the diagram, and it's not that well drawn. Yeah. So in order for our students to actually answer it, I think there's a need for them to redraw it to make it more palatable like this, because this is something that they are used to even in our H2 exams. Yeah. In fact, sometimes I was just sharing with colleagues that if you give to a good H2 students to do, with kind of interesting chemistry, I think they can go quite far in this question, because this question do not require any additional H3 knowledge on organic chem to actually attempt it. Yeah, they just need to be fundamentally sound. Yeah, in order to attempt it well. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I just come up with some comments on after looking at all these years, this for the past 2 years plus the specimen papers, right? What are the comments that I have actually on the setting of stimulus-based question? So I think one would be contemporary area of research in chemistry, of course. But of course, you can argue that hey, last year electrochem is not contemporary. It's actually on in 1988, old school stuff. Yeah, but old school stuff you realize was also heavily tested in the main paper, section A. Because section A, they actually test the students on very fundamental organic chemistry from those very old papers. Yeah, if you have those very fundamental textbooks, those old textbooks, which give you the links to all the old concepts. Yeah, so they actually took the ideas from there, and then they just give you the data, kinetics data whatsoever. They put it in the questions for you, for the students to try. Yeah, so I think for contemporary area research, I think I need to add one more part, which I forgot to add in. It's also very fundamental chemistry that they are testing. Yeah, so if you are listening to it for the first time, maybe you can just add that in. Very fundamental chemistry that they are testing. And then second bullet point may not be true every year. Like there tends to be contrasting abstract and diagrams, and they tend to simplify the things that they are trying to convey to the audience. For example, diagram, they try to make it clearer. Okay, and then unknown terms will either replace or just explain if they need to. And then sometimes they will give additional data. Okay, I have just again, in my own opinion, I've picked out the open-ended parts from the specimen paper as well as the 2019 and 2020 papers. So they tend to ask more open-ended kind of questions, really to test the students on comprehension skills, or maybe they just want to see what the students think about contemporary issues. Integration of topic is quite a big thing here, but I don't think Cambridge deliberately integrate topics on their own. But maybe when they try to set something and then it just happened that I can ask some more concept, I can ask some energetics, I can ask some organic chem, and then yeah, they're just free to do whatever they want. So yeah, integration of concept is a big thing. Yeah, so these are the comments I have, and then and you realize that all these are very heavy on what we call the practices of science. So it's actually on the next part where the students, I just highlighted under 2.4, 2.7, and 3.3. So they need to analyze data, make references, and evaluate information given to them. And then I think 3.3 is analyze, evaluate real-world systems. I think the problem, previous one was on nitrogen fixation, and then CO2 fixation as well. And then last year was on electrochem on the BAC 3. So I mean, you never know. Maybe this year they will want to test you something on electric vehicles, or maybe they will decide to go back to organic chem. I mean, it can be anything, but just ensure that the students are prepared to answer questions based on evaluating real-world scenarios. And this is especially the case for H3. H2, yeah, I mean, you have snippets of it, but I think H3 is very apparent. Okay, yeah, I think I came back to this because I think at the start I bored you guys with some details of this. I was saying that, in 2019 I found something interesting about interviewing some chemists. Yeah, so this is the exact PDF file. I mean, you have it in the shared drive. Just want to show you that this particular scientist, I think she's from she's from South Korea. She wrote about this sustainable production of chemicals, fuels from the reduction of water, nitrogen, carbon dioxide. Yeah. So I think one important thing I thought I could maybe share with the audience is that if you want to have some inspiration in setting contemporary topics in chemistry, you might want to look at the interview with these I think 50 scientists. Chemists to be exact. Then you just need one idea, from all their interviews, you just need to get one big idea, and then maybe from there you find some related website, research group, papers, etc. And then just craft a question from there, craft a question or two from there. I think that will work wonders. Yeah. So these are something more contemporary and something for you to think about as well. Yeah. And I also introduced to the audience previously on Google Scholar. I think it's not new to us. So you can just go to Google Scholar, but you need to be quite skillful in limiting your searches. And then due to the pandemic, I have to say that a lot of the major research papers, right, they actually have free open access copies. Not every article, I have to say, but some. But it's already much better than pre-COVID time. Yeah. So I mean, you can always go into some of your favorite journals in the past and then try to look out for their free access papers. Maybe they can also give you some inspiration in coming up with something interesting for the students. Yeah. Besides doing a search on Google Scholar, of course. Yeah. Okay. So I think Google Scholar is something that you can make use of if you want to search related websites or research articles to a topic of your interest. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so again, this is kind of down memory lane now. So back then I was, like sharing the audience 2 years ago, in fact, about how, what a possible thought process that, Cambridge might be having when they set a question. So I think later on, Kien Soon and Grace, they will also share with you the thought process as well. Not exactly the same, but I think it's similar. Yeah. So what I will be thinking if I'm Cambridge examiner, right, is I will probably choose a contemporary area of interest. So in this case, I think earlier on I mentioned CO2 activation, nitrogen fixation, and then I'll just gather articles. I wouldn't gather articles like within 1 or 2 days. I will do it over a period of time. Yeah. So you need to plan ahead. Maybe the next 3 or 4 years, what are the themes you potentially want to have, so that things will not, go down the drain. All your effort will not be wasted. And then try to have different methods like enzymes versus non-enzymes, Haber-Bosch, electrochem, like contrasting method. It's only when you have contrasting abstract that you can ask the students to compare and contrast. I think those are important skills we want the students to have as well. Yeah, and then different outcome, small scale, big scale, So if you have a paper with all these inside, I think it's brilliant. And then briefly read, check its relevance, and then set it, and then after that get your teammates to test. But I'll leave that to Grace and Kien Soon to share more. Okay, and then the last part of this, I think before we go for the Q&A and the break, right, is really just to share with you a little bit of our journey in Hwa Chong. So for the past 8 years, I think actually I never know that whatever I did in the past became very useful in the recent years. Yeah, so I started the journey in 2010 actually. Then I was tasked to teach the special program from 2011, 2012 onwards, and of course H3 as well. So I was tasked to do H3 from 2011, in fact. Yeah. So along the way, in order to actually challenge these these students who are super interested in chemistry, then we have to come up with some interesting resources and materials. So of course, you might be thinking, hey, is this something very recent? It looks like our stimulus-based question, modified in a different way, no, this was 2012, I have to tell you. Yeah, so in fact, in 2012, something interesting happened in our community of students. So actually, back then, we had 3 very talented students in chemistry. So at the start of the year, they already, in JC1, they already asked whether they can be, excluded from attending chemistry lessons. So they were asking, maybe we can do our own reading or this. Yeah. So with the approval from the school leaders, we got them excused from chemistry lessons. But along the way, we have to know that they are coping well beyond the usual test. So because of that, we actually set some interesting scenario-based questions for them to do. So this was actually one of the papers we used. So how many little vials can be inserted? Yeah. So this was, I think, published in 2000 something or 2010. Yeah. So we developed some questions. Then you realize that actually 10 years later, which is now, we can make use of these questions in our classroom setting because it's highly relevant. Of course, we need to tweak the question a little bit. Yeah. So again, I think I mentioned everything we do in the past sometimes can give you very positive outcomes 10 years later because you don't know when you're going to make use of them. Okay, so yeah, so these are the questions we came up with back then. Of course, I cannot just give my current students the question like this. I mean, it's not fair. So definitely for these students, we need to recraft the questions. Yeah, but I'm just saying that, for these 3 talented individuals, we can just throw them the whole paper, they read it, and then answer the questions for us. Yeah, but H3, no. So actually, we have to do more work for H3, if you realize. Yeah, actually the teachers have to do a lot more work because we have to craft it in a way that is suitable for them. Yeah, so it's definitely much easier to set a university exam paper because exam university style, you can just throw them a paper and then just ask them questions along the way. That's really way easier than H3, I have to say. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then just to share with you that in the past we used to have various checkpoints like lecture test 1 for our H3, and then our assessment for learning is really interest driven and focused on developing thinking skills. Due to COVID, we really can't conduct Viva. I think some of you were involved in our Viva in the past. Yeah, so it will be interesting to see how the students tackle questions, especially NMR and UV and aspect in structural elucidation. Okay, yeah. So and then even before the what do you call that, stimulus-based question came out, we also have we also set related questions before. In this case, it means on the Hammett constants. Yeah. Yeah, so this is just one of them, and then something related about how electron withdrawing and donating group affect the sigma values. Yeah, so it's really to really say that if you have already done something related or in the past related materials that you have either for research or any other purposes, if you relook at them, maybe they will come in useful now. This is one of the things I can share with the audience. Okay, yeah. So I mean the question is very long, I know. Yeah, but back then we are able to give it as some of assessment at the correct checkpoint. This is actually for the whole syllabus students, by the way. Yeah, but we already started this journey long time ago, from 2012. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this slide shouldn't be here, but actually I wanted to show this slide earlier on regarding how you should be searching for information. So I think one important skill is you need to be very exact in your search. So learn how to use not learn, but get used to the advanced search function and know how to input keywords and know maybe some of your favorite authors or researchers. I think it helps. Yeah, I think Google can do quite a wonderful job in this. Yeah. Yeah, and then you can get all this information out as well. Yeah, actually, this was an example I used back then to show the audience how to actually search the articles that were used for the specimen paper. Okay, and then I used this to search for one of the for actually 2 of the papers we used for one of our tasks. Yeah. So if you're interested, again, later on I can just share with you how this whole paper looks like. Yeah. Okay. So for the audience here, I mean, I'm going to just finish off in another 2 or 3 minutes. For audience here who are interested in, because I was asked this question for a few occasions, how do we actually prepare the students for the stimulus-based question? Okay, so the truth is we didn't exactly prepare them for it, but we strategically put in a collaborative task at the end of term 1. So basically for that collaborative task, we just printed an A3 article and then just for them to read as a group. Okay, it looks something like this. Yeah. So this maybe due to the sensitive information now, I think I have to tell you that the pictures were taken in 2019, so it's not taken last year or this year. Okay, just for all of your information. Yeah, these pictures were taken in 2019. So the collaborative task works like this. So they will be in different groups, and then they will discuss content, a stimulus in that sense. But of course, the stimulus is more demanding. It's definitely more demanding than the stimulus-based question in Cambridge because they are working as a group. Yeah, so then they come up with a common solution, something along those lines. Yeah, so I think our stimulus task was actually based on this particular research done by Dr. Tan Chun Hong in NTU on SN2X. I think he'll be giving this talk in November, and it should be quite similar to this. Yeah, yeah. Okay, then maybe a final question you might have is, oh, so do y'all do this year? Yeah, because this year, I think the students are able to work in groups of 5 or 6, something along those lines, at least before, I mean, in phase 3. So we actually have it with them mask on. Yeah, so actually we did carry this out for our individual classes, even, I mean, this year. Yeah, but last year we did it because COVID haven't hit us. Yeah, I mean, all the restrictions weren't in yet. Yeah, so this year we did it as well. In case that might be the question you have. Okay, these are some of the responses given by the students, but really, my role today is not really to share with you how successful or not so successful were the tasks. Yeah, so maybe one other thing that you might be interested in, so what after the collaborative task? So after that, we have an individual task as a formative assessment, just to test them on the very basic stuff, just for information, just very basic stuff. What do we mean by very basic stuff? I mean, it could be maybe draw a chair conformation and then do some conformation analysis, and then maybe explain the stereospecificity of an E2 reaction, something along those lines. Very, very simple kind of questions that you might expect in a tutorial. Yeah, we just want to ensure that their basic are sound. So there are two different things we do here. The collaborative one is really for them to use it as an entry point for them to know about stimulus-based question. The individual task is to ensure that their basic is sound, so that the students know that at least what they have studied is applicable. Yeah, okay. And then the thought process in coming up with the collaborative task, of course, we must be mindful that they are looking at it for the first time. We must be mindful that it cannot be too easy. It cannot be something too straightforward. There must be some difficulty in knowing that they work in groups. So I think the way to set it is also similar to stimulus-based question. Yeah, very similar, except that we can afford to put in a little bit more details because they are in groups. Okay, we used to allow the students to draw lots and decide who, in the groups, but we realized that it became a disaster. So along the way, we actually strategically put in slightly stronger students in each group within our own classes, so that at least they will help each other. But they will not dominate the discussion because some of the questions, some of the ideas even stun them. So I think they really need that discussion to get the ideas running. Okay, yeah, I think that's really it. Oh, okay, this slide is not meant to be here, but you can see it's a beautiful slide. It's of a beautiful painting. Yeah, okay, I think I'm done. Is there any questions that you might have? I say before we go for the break, or I'll let it be some form of a Q&A or what, a very short one, before I let Grace and Kien Soon talk about their experience in setting for last year. Yeah.
Johnson, I have a question here. Just wondering, how do you scope the type of chemistry you're looking at? Because technically it can be any kind of chemistry, right? Or I'm just wondering, how do you scope your choice of research in the chemistry topics? Because I mean, H3 Chem, I can even test things on polymer or nanochem or what. I'm not sure what are considerations when you come into that kind of scoping down for the stimulus-based question. Yeah.
I'm not sure if I understood your question completely. Scoping meaning to narrow the scope, is it? Or
that means when you start thinking about setting your stimulus-based question, right? I mean, there are a lot of different branches of chemistry to look at. So how do you decide which branch you should focus in on? Is it because of the H3 content? You look at the curriculum structure itself, then you decide on which scope of which type of chemistry to look at, or do you just what you're interested in, you go ahead?
Oh, okay, yeah. At least as I think I mentioned a little bit at the start, at least for me, right, when I think of it, I will, okay, I think let's go back to, let's say, 3 years ago. I think because 3 years ago we don't know the situation well. We don't know like what are the kind of questions that Cambridge is likely to set. We just have a specimen paper with us. So I actually told my team that maybe we should in 2018 we should try to set something and we see how we feel about it. And then they said, you decide lah. I mean, what to set. So I don't want to set something too organic, but I also don't want to set something that is way out of what the students is going to expect for H3 lah. And knowing that that is the batch of pharmaceutical chemistry students, they are not like the new syllabus students, but because they have the necessary H2 knowledge, so we can actually use some formative assessment as a test bed for them to test those questions. I mean, they are like guinea pigs, but I don't want to put it that they are guinea pigs now, because at least when you set something, you want the students to try it out, and then when they try it out, then you will see how it's like, and then we ask them for their feedback. Yeah, so for the first time in 2018, we actually set a question on transition elements. We use transition element as a backbone because it's in H2 syllabus, and then we use it to set questions based on coupling reactions. Because coupling reaction is useful in contemporary research. And then we use 2 different contrasting examples to actually ask them why is one better than the other, something like that. Yeah, so it's a bit deliberate. We try to insert all this in because we want to see students' response to this kind of scenario based and what kind of opinions they have when it comes to that. Yeah, so that's how I thought about it. So that was in 2018 when we want to test bait something. Yeah. Then fast forward 2019. I mean, when it came to 2019, right? I have to plan for the prelim papers. But of course, when we plan 1 year ahead. So 2019 was actually the first batch of the new syllabus. So I need to plan the assessment in a sense because we have 2 formative assessments before the prelims. So we have the lecture test one, which I mean we no longer call it lecture test already. Like we call it collaborative and individual tasks. So yeah, so I have to decide the theme, and then we have to decide another theme for the after the June holidays. Or was it before? I can't remember. I think it's before. Yeah. Then for prelim. Prelim was the one that I collaborated with Shang Ling in London. Yeah. So what transpired was that they must have 3 different themes. Yeah. But the one in March, the theme must be quite similar to what they are learning. I cannot give them something that is very H2-ish. Because to me, it doesn't quite make sense because they are in H3, probably because they, at least at that stage. Because for Hwa Chong, we started with stereochem and mechanism. So it will seem very weird if suddenly for their collaborative tasks, we throw them, I don't know, equilibrium, for example. Yeah, so it's too contrasting for them. So we wanted something very similar. Yeah, so it happens that it happened that I have a friend working in NTU with Dr. Tan Chun Hong. So he said that they have done some SN2X thingy, you might be interested to look at it. I said, oh, okay, I'll take a look at it. And then, yeah, then I crafted something from there for the collaborative task. Yeah, and then because SN2X is very contrasting to the, what do you call that, what they are learning for SN2. Yeah, but if I don't remember wrongly, right, in the end, I didn't use the SN2X. I actually used something else. Yeah. I mean, my NLC members will have known it because back then I was just sharing them how the whole process came about. Yeah, I actually use something else. I didn't use the SN2X. Yeah. Then in May, I asked my colleague Ga Hong to actually set something. So he actually set something related to macromolecules. Like you hit jackpot. You mentioned that. Yeah, but it's largely on macrocycles. And again, it's a bit organic related. A little bit inorganic related as well. So we wanted to give them a different exposure. Yeah, and then of course before June came in, Sean and I, we sort of decide I decided on nitrogen fixation. It was just a spur of inspiration because I kind of like nitrogen fixation since I was a student. So I thought that let's do it. And then she's agreeable because she said that it's quite related to the CO2 fixation. So she's quite happy with it. Since she's happy with it, I'm happy with it, and let's try to set something. So we did, and then in the end that year came out ammonia thing. Just stroke of luck. Yeah. Last year, the COVID year was again a bit different as well. But last year, I'm no longer the coordinator. So I actually leave it to Gahong to decide. But of course, when it comes to the formative assessment, because I'm involved in combined prelim, right? He also did ask for my input on what are the themes I wanted. Yeah, so I actually shared with him that maybe I wanted something electrochem related or maybe I can't remember what are other topics. Then in the end, I think Grace and I or rather I left her to decide. So she decided on electrochem. She found something and then she showed me a sample of it. I said, oh, I'm okay with it. So I can't exactly pinpoint like what exactly is the thinking, but I would say I try to expose them to different things. In terms of scoping, of course, you started wanting to do a lot, which is always the case. We wanted a lot, but in the end you have to narrow down because there's a limit to the number of marks that the students can take. And you can't have the whole paper on stimulus. So again, yeah. But of course, you can always set more so that in the future they can be used for other purposes. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I answered your question directly, but yeah, I mean, that's all I can think of.
Okay, thank you. I have a better idea. Yeah. So you help. Yeah, thank you.
You guys want to go for a break? I think it makes more sense than before I get Kien Soon and Grace to come in. I think they are already here, but I think we probably want to go for 5 minutes toilet break. So let's be back by 4:45. Yeah, I actually told them to share for about 10 minutes, so I think yeah, we definitely end on time or before that. Yeah, but of course, if you have questions, just feel free to ask. Yeah, so we'll go for a break. See you at 4:45. Yeah. Okay, everyone. Yeah, we are back. Okay, so now I will invite Grace to share with us first. I will share the slides with you. Yeah, is that okay? Any questions?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, hello everyone. This is Grace from SAJC. I'm actually on maternity leave now, but Chongshin asked me to share, then I cannot say no to an old friend. So yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity. So I'd like to clarify first, I'm not an expert in setting stimulus base. Actually, my whole life, I've only set one H3 stimulus question, and that was because last year, SAJC collaborated with HCI and ACJC to set combined prelim. So last year was also SAJC's first year offering H3 Chem. So it's a learning process for me as well as the teachers from my school. So when I set this stimulus-based question, it was also under the guidance of Chongshin, who is very experienced. So today I'll just give a quick sharing of how the process was when I set the stimulus base. If you ask me, being the first time I do this, the entire process does take quite some time. In fact, I think it's a lot more challenging setting this H3 stimulus than any H2 question I've ever set. So definitely you need some protected time to read through, to search for inspiration, as well as to craft the questions. So if you ask me, I think I took about a week during the June holidays. Of course, not the entire week, I was doing it on and off. So I have summarized the process into 5 simple steps. The first one would be to search for a topic. So just now there was also a question posed by one of the participants on how he narrowed down the scope. I think for H2, Chongshin, maybe the next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So for H2, because there's also database questions. So for H2, normally we will tend to look out for newspaper articles to gain inspiration. So for instance, I think we will look out for any newsworthy stuff that appear in the papers to get our inspiration for H2. However, for H3, due to the higher demand, newspapers are not sufficient. So what we can do is to serve the uni websites or research group websites for current research interests. So what happens is that these are just some examples that I randomly selected. what you have on university websites are not very technical because it's meant for the public. Of course, it's meant for the more scientifically literate public, but it's still meant for the public. So you can look through to see anything that interests you. So the scope is really very, very big, but I think what students appreciate would be topics that involve broad themes like sustainability, environment, renewable energy, and the like. Because I think that's the whole point of scientific advancement. You want to do research to solve some sort of problem that society is facing. Okay, so Chongxin, maybe we move on to the. So here are some examples of newspaper articles that we will use for H2 database questions, just simple newspaper articles. But for H3, you can start getting your inspiration from topics like this, which are available on the university or research institute websites. So you can see that, there are things related to green chemistry, how to do things more efficiently, more cost effectively, and so on. So for those of us who have friends who are also working in academia, I think most of us should have because we all did science in our uni days. So some of our friends might have remained in university. We can also chat with them on what they are working on. Maybe they can also inspire us by sharing relevant papers that are related to their research and so on. So there is no one right topic, but just find something that interests you. And I feel that another important point is something that students can relate to. So once you have narrowed down to a topic that you are interested in, then now you have to go and search for the relevant journal articles or papers. So from the original website, you might get links to the journal papers, or the article itself might be sufficient. And just now, I think Chongxin also shared a little bit about being able to search on, Google Scholar or other means to access relevant journals. Some of us might also be very concerned because we might feel that, most of these journals are actually not open access, so we can only see the introduction and the abstract. But when I was actually preparing these slides, I realized that now, as compared to maybe a few years ago when I was still in CPDD and we were doing a lot of focus group discussions for the revised H3 syllabus, there is actually an increasing trend in open access journals. So when I was preparing these slides, I realized that ACS, American Chemical Society, RSC, which is based in UK, WOWLI, which is based in Europe, they have a lot of open access journals now, and they're actually also encouraging a lot of research groups to publish there. So the whole idea is that they want to provide more opportunities for scientists to share their research and for science to progress quicker. So I think for the purpose of our stimulus setting, these open access papers should be sufficient. We do not need to purchase anything behind a paywall or anything like that. So maybe you all can just Google for open access chemistry journals. There are really, really a wide variety for you to choose from now. So in addition to research articles, for the purpose of stimulus settings, I find review articles very useful. We are all very familiar with review articles from our uni days, because I'm sure we all have to do some sort of lit review assignment. So for review papers, they summarize recent developments in the field. So what I like is that there's always this summary, the story about the problem faced, and the people who write the papers will share various approaches that the different research groups use to solve the problem. So I like this because it also gives the opportunity to see different techniques used to tackle the problem, and also allows us to set compare and contrast type of questions, which gives students the opportunity to showcase their POS skills. So when they can do things like compare cost effectiveness, compare which method is better, which they think is preferred approach, and so on. So some of you might also be wondering that, these papers are very long, very hard to digest. Actually, there's no need to be afraid of not being able to understand the entire paper. When I was setting the stimulus question for last year, actually I only read the introduction, the abstract, and conclusion in great detail. For the very technical details of the research, methodology, the results, and so on, it's actually not necessary to use to set the stimulus, because after all, our students are sitting for A-level prelim paper, so the level must also be manageable for them. So if, sometimes there's information overload, you might find it very hard to narrow down to a single paper, but it's actually also okay to select 2 different papers with the same overarching theme. So for last year's prelim, after my reading, I actually selected this review paper from Advanced Science. You can see here it's open access. So it's related to carbon capture and electrochem. So I chose electrochem because in the previous, like the 2019 as well as the specimen paper, there was no electrochem. So I thought maybe we can try a different theme lah. Okay, so it was carbon capture related, somewhat related to electrochem also. And what Chong-Shin suggested is also to include another article on artificial photosynthesis. So what he did was to suggest a different article. This one is not even a journal paper. It's just an article from a scientific magazine that's available online. So it's also very easy reading. So we use these 2 articles which have the same theme of carbon capture using different methods for our stimulus. So once we narrowed down the source, we would need to edit the stimulus because we have to keep it short and simple. If you have taken a look at past year Cambridge papers, the length of the stimulus must really be manageable because the students must be able to finish reading plus answering all the questions in 30 minutes. That's the idea lah. Okay, so we really need to edit down such that it's clear and concise for the students. So I think I've also seen past year prelim papers. There are some stimulus that are really quite heavy on reading load. I mean, I'm not trying to say that those questions are no good. There is no perfect question, but in general, I think we try to keep it manageable for students. Some other tips I feel is that don't just focus on the text, because the whole idea is that we want to give students a wide range of data. So things like diagrams, graphs, reaction schemes, tables, if they are relevant, can also be included. So students are exposed to different types of data. Okay, so for our editing process last year, I remember there was this graph where the units were in Fahrenheit. So for that, we need to give the students a little bit more scaffolding. So we provide conversion from Fahrenheit to Celsius so that it's more relatable to the students. Then I remember we also spent quite a bit of time trying to edit the stimulus, the articles, such that we can keep it to 2 pages, including the diagrams. So we will just cut out the irrelevant or the overly technical prose of the original articles. Okay, so moving on, once the stimulus is vetted, actually part 4 and part 3 should be done in parallel, because as you are setting the question, you will also need the relevant parts of the paper. So step 3 and 4 will be probably done like iteratively. So for question setting, how I did it was I tried to link to H2 topics first, because I think I'm only taking reference from the past year H3 papers. The stimulus questions actually focus quite a lot heavily on H2 topics as well as practices of science. What I feel is that the stimulus question is probably the best opportunity to set the POS questions. And if you can see the past year papers, close to 100% of the marks, like close to 20 marks, are all on H2 as well as POS. So for things like the H3 topics, I assume that there are plenty of other opportunities to set questions to test these LOs in the subsequent questions. So maybe we don't have to worry so much about the H3 LOs when we are setting the stimulus-based questions. Of course, if there are opportunities to test things related to spectroscopy, drawing of novel mechanisms, we can do so, but we do not have to overly worry about this. Okay, so once we have narrowed down the stimulus plus set the questions, this part is quite important, is to check for your blind spots and to review the entire thing. I feel that for H3 is slightly different from H2 because we are much more familiar with the style of H2 questions. So actually when we vet H2, I don't think we actually test it out under time conditions, because as teachers, we are experienced, we look at it, then most of the time we can answer immediately, we know what sort of mistakes students will make and so on. However, for H3, I feel that we might also not be so familiar with what is being tested. So especially if it's a area of Chem that we might not be too familiar with, especially, you know, it's cutting edge research from the journals and so on. So what I feel is that there will be more flexibility in the range of acceptable answers for H3, as well as a wider range of acceptable answers. So it's quite important to really test through it to get somebody else's opinion, to ensure that what we have said is scientifically sound and also will make sense to the students lah. So I think that's it for my sharing. I hope you found it helpful. I feel that there's no one ideal method because, as mentioned just now, the range of possible topics or the range of possible stimulus to use is so wide. But I hope that through this sharing, you can take some tips, like for instance, where to access the open access journals, maybe the focus on review articles, combining different papers with overarching themes and so on. So you can use these tips and adapt it to your own school's needs. So yeah, I think Chongshin can add in if you feel necessary, and for the rest of the participants, feel free to let us know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yep. I just thought, I mean, it's not that I want to drag the time, but because I had something here, so I thought I just want to share. I mean, it's actually in a sharing folder lah. So if you guys, I mean, all of you are interested, you can just visit the folder because we have the original question from Grace, which I'm going to open up. Which have this particular text, and then okay, so I have to say that when she first said the question, right, the stimulus is only is one page, of course with some data, and then and these are of course the questions which follows lah. So but having looked at it, I just thought that we can maybe do a little bit more so that we can stretch the students a bit in that direction. So what I did was as she mentioned, we made some suggestions. So so the suggestion was to include some data like this, and this was the one that which she mentioned about the graph being Fahrenheit. Yeah, so there, of course, there was some discussion as to whether we need to replot the graph or this, but we decided that the original diagram looks very nice, so we just kept it as it is. And then the bulk of the text which she mentioned is, I mean, is being kept, except with some modification. And then of course we went on to find out another article from the Sustainability Times, which she mentioned. It's an online website related. We found a graph which I thought is interesting, and then of course we give them data on things like internal quantum yield. I mean, it's basically, you know, like elevate the question a little bit by giving it a little bit more flavors, and so that the student get a whole range of experience that they need to interpret the graph, they need to use the formula to do some calculation. That were the thoughts we had in mind. And then of course, what you saw in the final version for the prelim papers was really the version where, you know, like we talk about it for over a few hours. I mean, if you add up all the time, so it's not an easy thing. It's not like it's done over in half an hour or what. Yeah, because when it's brought to the team for discussion, there were more questions coming lah. I mean, some of the members provided feedback, like, you know, like certain things are not very clear, so we have to change accordingly. Yeah, so I think yeah, if you are interested, you can just take a look at the before and after version. Not so much as to compare like what is better or not. It's more of to see that, you know, after discussion or after adding different flavors, so we elevated the question to another level of complexities. Of course, not too complex in that sense. Yeah, so I'm largely done with my part. As in Grace, do you have any more things to add? I think I covered everything. Yeah. If not, maybe Kien Soon. I'll invite Kien Soon to share with you.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. I did not specifically or specially made some slides, so I will just be sharing through from this PDF for the paper that was set for the past 2 years by us. Okay, maybe I just start off with the 2019 paper. Like what Grace said, I think the first thing that when we set stimulus-based question is probably you must come up with a theme first. Once you come up with a theme, then you have a focus on where on what to search for on Google or whatsoever papers that you need. So for example, in 2019, the theme that I thought of was actually this formation of amides, and because what the students are learning in H2 is just using acyl chloride and an amine to form an amide. So I was thinking, maybe try something else, show them something else. So I went on to search online and found this paper here from Nature in 2010, which is an unusual way of synthesizing amides through an unprolonged reaction, which is to reverse the polarity. So I put down the information, and I did not totally copy the whole paper. In fact, the text here is like what Grace shared. We just need the front part, the abstract part, or the introduction part to give students more information on what this paper is about. Because majority of the paper is just basically the technical details, which even if you give it to the students, I don't think they are able to appreciate what the scientists are doing. Okay, so I just copy out whatever things that's required that I want to set a question, which I feel that is interesting, that is worth coming up and crafting a question. So I thought this diagram here was something interesting that I show it to them. I redraw it and I show it to them. Okay, and then I found a second paper. Oh yeah, by the way, I showed them the mechanism, right? And this table here, it was not given in the paper, but I come up myself because I need them to do some calculation as we need to link the questions to something related to H2. So it's something about, more calculation, right? And then there's a second paper here, similar, formation of amides, but of course using a different method. Okay, so the information that I gave on the second paper or the second abstract is somewhat similar to what I gave on the first abstract, so that at least some of the questions that we can set is probably a comparison in terms of the two methods. So I give them the mechanism, right? And even this table also, right? Kind of similar to the first abstract. And because in 2019, the only reference that we have was actually the specimen paper. And according to the specimen paper, it was more of, something like a comparison of the two abstract, as well as some green chemistry, environmental chemistry kind of question. So I went on to search for this PMI formula, so that at least probably one of the questions can be, calculating the PMI and comparing two methods to see which method is better. And yeah, that can be a question. Right. So talking about a question, I think for me, when I said these are stimulus-based question, usually I will try to allocate about 1 or 2 marks at least to be testing something that is really beyond the syllabus, beyond H3, beyond H2. Something that I just want the students to think out of the box, give me a answer that, that they cannot find in lecture notes, right? I just want to see how creative they are to give me a good answer to answer the question. For example, right, if you look at part A and part B for this paper, for this question here that we set in 2019, I don't think we will definitely write this in the lecture notes. It's really through general knowledge. For example, what is the importance of imide bonds formation, or even two problems that that we encounter if we use conventional method to synthesize amide, right? So something that allows them to think out of the box. and to give a logical answer. Okay. And then, of course, as I said, for abstract 1, I try to find something that, is interesting in abstract 1. Like, for example, what is the word ampolang represent? That's why I purposely give them a picture, and I just want them to refer back to the picture and come up with a suitable explanation of what is the word ampolang means, right? And subsequently, it's all explaining something that they have learned in H2. Right? How come the nitroalkane is having a acidic H? Something that they can relate to H2, because according to the syllabus, it's just extension of. H3 is extension of H2. So maybe they just need to, compare and use the knowledge that they have to explain that because of the stability of this conjugate base, and that's why the H is acidic, right? And of course, I will need them to do some link it back to what they have learned in H3, right? Assigning the E and Z configuration, right? And back then I really ran out of ideas to set the 20 marks. So I go back to basic, ask them for the type of reaction for each of the steps, right? And yeah. And do some calculation, right? And then compare, do some calculation for both abstracts, and using the PMI formula that I give in abstract 3 to do a calculation and compare. Kind of similar to the specimen paper that was given back in 2019, right? Because that was the only reference that we have. And then back in last year, 2020, we collaborated with SAJC, but this question came from us. So again, same thing last year. The first question that I asked myself is, okay, think of a team. So I went online, Google, and randomly searched. Okay, I remember I typed green chemistry. I remember I typed something like sustainable methods of, protecting the environment or something like that. Think of a team. So many things came out. But one of the paper actually pop up was this one here, something about synthesizing CC bonds using electrolysis, right? So again, from the abstract, the first part, in fact, the paragraph here is from the abstract itself from the paper, okay? And then I redraw this diagram. Of course, I need to do some editing because the original paper, this equation here, right, it was kind of complicated, okay? I drew the catalyst for them, right, hoping that they can see that it's actually an enantiomers of each other, right? And that was the one and only one abstract. I gave them the mechanism as well, okay? And for this question here, I also gave them some of the procedure, as well as how much of the reactant was added for the original paper. Okay. And in fact, for the original paper, it was stated here about the percentage U and this enantiomeric excess. So my original question was set in such a way that there was a percentage U where they need to calculate. You remember, if you look carefully, we have I purposely put a 5 more % here because I have one question that needs them to do some more calculation of how much of the catalyst was needed based on the percentage U. So the original question was, there's a percentage U written here, as well as the percentage EE, enantiomeric excess. So actually, we can, based on those information, we can do a lot of, manipulating of the data and setting of the questions where, right, you can use the EE value to ask them to calculate for the angle rotation, this and that. Okay. So again, for the first question, for last year, right? So again, first 2 question, again, like what I say, I will purposely set 1 or 2 questions that is really beyond the syllabus, get them to think out of the box, right? What's the significance of chirality in drug design, as well as how come a Lewis acid catalyst is usually used to synthesize chiral substances, okay? So again, I remember while marking this two questions, most of the students are able to tell me the answer for part A, but in fact, majority of the students are not able to tell me the answer for part B. It's only when we go through the paper, after we mark, the student realize how chiral substances or chiral products can be produced using chiral catalysts. At least they learn something else that is beyond of the scope of syllabus, right? So of course, again, I give them these two equations. So based on the information that is given in the abstract, I give them the mechanism. I expect them to be able to interpret the mechanism and tell me what is a suitable gas that was evolved at the cathode, right? So if they are able to interpret the mechanism properly, they should be able to detect that H2 gas was evolved. In fact, for my side, not a lot of students are able to read about one or two of them. They are able to detect that it was in fact the H2 gas that was evolved. Okay, and link back to H2, again, I just need them to write equations, half equations, and combine the two equations together. And using the overall equation to calculate something that they have learned back in H2, the delta H, using bond energy values that they can find inside the data booklet. And of course, from there, the delta H, I just tell them, predict whether the reaction is spontaneous and explain whether the reaction is spontaneous high or low temperature. Okay, do some more calculation as usual, right? And it can also be linked to electrochem calculation, right? And I start changing the electrodes to something that is reactive and ask them what happens. So up to here, we can see that most of the, in fact, up to part D, when I said a question last year, I tried to link back to H2. Things that they have learned and applied to new situations like this, right? So I think very similar to what Grace have shared just now. I think there should be some link between H2 and H3 since it is an extension. And of course, part E, again, I need them to really focus on the abstract that was given and to propose which catalyst specifically give a particular enantiomer. Right, so they are supposed to look at the information that was given, and then decide and draw for me the correct product with the correct configuration. Okay, and again, part F is to link back to kinetics, right? And part G, the last part, was to draw a random mechanism based on the reaction that was given. So they just draw a simple radical reaction, which in fact, majority of students were able to do it last year. So in fact, it was 17 marks here. The original question when I said was in fact 20. The other two parts that was removed away was the calculation of the enantiomeric axis and the angle rotation, because the rest of the setters for their questions, they have already set calculation of enantiomeric axis and angle rotation for the Leno-Pori slide. So that's the reason why we have to compromise, and I remove it from here. So after starting 2 years of stimulus-based question, if you ask me for my experience, I think, again, like what Grace said, I'm not an expert as well. Okay, just 2 years of experience, nothing much. I think the most important thing is think of a team. The team is important, all right? And then we work from the team. And when we craft questions, just let our ideas run wild. Try to link as much back to the H2 syllabus where the students are familiar, right? Get them to use things that they have learned and link back to what they see in the paper. Okay. Yeah. So yes, that's all I have to share. Right. Thank you. Chongxin, back to you.
Thank you very much. I think that's very interesting sharing. Do you, anyone have any questions or things that you would like to add?
I think the most important thing setting questions is really let our ideas run wild. No questions are bad questions, I feel. Yep. Probably as a group, as a team, when we set questions, we can sit down and discuss how we can change and manipulate the questions in such a way that is more suitable for the students. So in fact, just let the ideas run wild. it can be beyond a school syllabus. Not everything, but probably 1 or 2 marks to get the students to think out of the box, really.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Anyone else, like you want to, I mean, since we have Kien Soon and I think Grace with us, and then I'm around as well. Is there any, I don't know, any things you want to share with us or ask? Or if you have experience in setting, can also share with us over here. I mean, so that all of us are, I mean, at least we are a community together, learning on all this together. Yeah, if not, then I think tomorrow is holiday. I wish all of you a good break.